Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is the review of Smile 2. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are gathering together to talk about Smile 2, the latest horror film in the Smile franchise. Stephen, I believe shortly before going to see Smile 2, you finally sat down to watch Smile 1, and just wanted a quick, brief chat about how you handled that and what you thought of that film.
So I distinctly remember when the trailers for the original Smile were coming out. I looked at that and said, I'm never going to watch that movie. Because it was just so clearly a jump scare machine. You know, it was so obvious that it was the exact kind of horror movie that I do the worst with ever. So much so that I have vague memories of you even telling me the ending of Smile, because it was like, clearly Steven is never going to watch this. And so sitting down to watch Smile in my scary house alone in the evening, it fucked me up a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think it does its job well. It is a very effective horror device, right? Because it's so simple. Like, anyone suddenly making this face, you know, it is such an easy thing to massively parallelize, you know, when it comes to a movie. And it just was creepy. I think the way it focuses on a therapist in particular who is dealing with trauma, and then she's spending a lot of time alone trying to cope and then dealing with all these heavy images. It's very heavy-handed in the lineage of, like, the horror movie that's, quote, actually about trauma. But it is effectively creepy in that way. Yeah, I left feeling creeped out, and I had a lot of trouble sleeping for the next 2 nights. So fuck you for making me watch it. But I can't deny that it was an effective horror movie. It was certainly effective at what it wanted to do.
So when you were getting ready to walk into Smile 2, were you just like, oh, dear God, here I'm doing it again? Or was there a level of excitement ready for that?
Yeah, I don't know. So I saw Smile 1 on like a Monday and saw Smile 2 on Thursday. So I had enough time to recover and stop being scared before going in. So part of me was like, why the hell am I doing this? You know, why am I doing this to myself right now? But then I was a little excited, just of like, I feel like this is going to be a fun roller coaster, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe like, because I know what I'm getting into now, I know I can survive it. I know I can be okay 2 days later. And also, it was the weekend, so I wasn't going to be working from the house at all. So, like, we've already established that ghosts and stuff don't come to apartments. Like, just nothing bad happens in an apartment. So I felt more safe and secure otherwise. So, yeah, I was a little excited. I was like, this is going to be fun and silly, and I can't believe I'm doing it for the podcast, but what the hell? Why not?
Yeah. I think for me, there are some films that I get excited that I am making you watch, and like that excitement is more than my excitement for the actual film. But Smile 2 was one that I was genuinely, like, actually pretty excited for, just because I was a huge fan of Smile 1. So yeah, I was excited one way or another. I guess I get double bonus excitement for making you watch it, or I guess triple excitement because I made you watch 2 of them.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome, Stephen.
It isn't quite as bad as The Conjuring when you made me watch 3 of them. Was that episode 666? There must have been some reason I said yes to that.
Yeah, it must have been 666.
Or when you did Hereditary Midsummer. You love to make me watch multiples.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, you got to rip that Band-Aid off and like dive in full hog, right? You can't just dip a toe into the scariness.
You got to rip that Band-Aid off like your younger sister's head.
Oh, good times. But yeah, ready to get into this, Stephen?
Yep.
All right, folks. We are going to take a listen to the trailer for Smile 2, and then we're going to come back and give you all a review.
I need you to listen to me. Something really bad happened. You remember Louis Fergoli?
From high school?
I went to his apartment. But when I showed up... Louis?
He was smiling at me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Skye Riley. You are in the middle of a big world tour.
You okay?
I keep seeing this face everywhere.
This thing is a parasite. You witnessed a death. Now it's latched onto you.
911, what's your emergency?
I've traced the string of deaths to you. Nobody has survived longer than a week.
Skye, pull it together and get back out there.
No, I will not let this thing use me.
We have to end it! No matter what! You're not in control! I am!
I need to stop it, but I don't know how.
All right, so that was the trailer for Smile 2. It basically picks up a week after the events of the first film and follows a pop star who is the latest person to be affected by the smile curse, I guess is what we call it. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Smile 2?
I thought Smile 2 was a lot of fun, and it had a different effect on me than Smile 1 did. Smile 1 made me uneasy. You know, it made me uncomfortable. It deals a lot with isolation and solitude and the creepiness around, like, semi-suburban life, at least. Like, a lot of things that are very easy to relate to or internalize. Smile 2 blows everything up. Smile 2 is a giant roller coaster. It's an amusement park ride, right? Like, I can't tell if this is a positive or negative, but it feels significantly less scary on a personal level because of how big and silly and ridiculous it is. And that means I had a lot more fun with it because I probably 20 minutes in realized I was not going to be terrified. And instead I could just kind of enjoy the ride the way I think other people enjoy the ride of horror movies and just like laugh and giggle and eat my popcorn, you know, and feel good about it. I think in many ways it is a better made movie than Smile 1. It is certainly bigger. The production value is much higher. I think Naomi Scott as Skye, the main kind of Lady Gaga, Billie Eilish-esque character, is really good. Like, I think she does a good job very quickly of introducing this is who she is, this is what she's struggling with, this is why fame is difficult. And I think she carries the movie pretty effortlessly. And I feel like the first movie is all about what the hell is this thing? Why are these creepy things happening to me? Why are these jump scares going to keep happening? I hate this, kill me. At least, you know, some of us maybe felt that way. This movie is much more, we know what this thing is. Holy shit, what is going to happen when it gets to her? Oh my God, I know where this is going. I know where this is going. And so the whole movie plays much more as a, almost like we felt with the alien Romulus, where it's like, we are going to tee things up and then knock them down. We're just going to knock them down one after another, after another, after another. And that makes it just really fun and ridiculous and silly. Like, I think the cast is all pretty fun here. I really like Lukas Gage is like all over the trailer and the promotional materials, but I think he is like perfect for that role and the kind of recurring haunting character he has to be. Always love seeing Dylan Galula and stuff. I was surprised to see Dr. Taub from House show up eventually. I don't know if this trailers are going to spoil that or if we're going to edit them out.
I'm going to edit it. I'm going to leave him there except for certain lines of dialogue, which I don't want to spoil.
Yeah, like this basically, I'm not going to say this is a great movie. Like I think it's a kind of predictable, and the silliness means like, if it doesn't overstay its welcome, it definitely like would have if it played like 5 more minutes for me. Like it isn't like there's a ton going on here. But it's just a lot of it's like a movie where they realized with the first movie they had a franchise on their hands rather than just a single installment. And it feels like Parker Finn said, okay, but how the hell am I going to make a franchise out of this? It is so obviously a one-trick wonder. Like, it's a thing you can only do once. I even revealed the big bad and everything in the first one. Like, I did the thing that makes you blow your load in a horror movie where, like, I showed everything, right? So now what can I do? And this is almost a movie where he, like, what do I want to say? This is the movie where it feels like they are anticipating all the questions audiences will have about the lore of Smile and how the hell are they going to make a sequel, and just cramming all of that into one movie. Like, we get characters that basically present the solve that you and I both were thinking about with Smile 1 of, isn't this the way you would escape this situation? Like, we have people who are basically the voice of the audience saying, this is fucking crazy. Let's do something about it. And that just makes it, for me, a much more fun time. So I enjoyed it. There's a lot of memorable images, you know, groups of people moving in unison in a creepy way. Stuff that, like, it is seared into my brain, not in a this ruined my night way, but in a kind of, I get a little giggle when I think about it. So yeah, I don't know. I had fun with this admittedly dumb, but more ambitiously dumb than the first movie sequel. How about you?
Yeah, so, I mean, I definitely wouldn't call this film dumb. I think the writers are smarter than you expect them to be. Not that I discount their smartness in the first place, but I feel like this is a film where, you know, I kind of was texting with you before I got to sit down to watch the film that, like, just seeing the icon for the trailer for the movie in the, like, sub menu of rewatching Smile 1 before going to the theaters, I was like, oh, I know exactly all the beats that this movie is going to take. But this film actually knows that you know those beats and does a really, really, really good job of, like, subverting them a little bit. Like, not entirely. Like, obviously this film still has to go to the places that you know it has to go to, but the way it plays with the fact that it knows that you know where it's going, I thought was actually like, oh, like, good on you. Like, when I was watching this film, I was intellectually stimulated by what they were trying to do, and I was like, oh man, they've thought through so much of this stuff. This is really interesting. These decisions all are perfect decisions to make in this space they're trying to play in. But something about it was like, but I still know where it's going, and that's taking away from my experience. And then as soon as it started to fuck with that, I was like, oh, you are smarter than me.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, like, not only did you swerve, but, like, you swerved hard and actually took me to a place where I no longer cared about the thing that I was waiting to happen, and I started to care about other things. And it wasn't like, it's not like they like, it's not misdirecting. It is grabbing your hand and taking you on a different journey than what you were expecting or what you were kind of thinking they were going to do. And I loved that sort of experience. So it's like, this is a film that has to play with what you know and play with how it's playing in its own space and kind of repeatedly take you places where you're so used to it from the first film, especially if you did rewatch it shortly before going to see it, or watch it for the first time shortly before going to see it. Like, you know, it's just again very competently made, and it knows exactly what it's about to put you through. On top of that, they continue to make great choices for who receives the smile curse, right? In the first film, it is a person who deals with people who have various forms of, like, psychosis and things like that, right? And it's a person who is talking to other people who believe in something that probably doesn't exist, and then she is starting to exhibit her own apparent psychosis, and the people around her think she's just dealing with the trauma of seeing something bad happen in front of her. And it's like, it plays with that. This film takes that and says, okay, well, we've done that one. What can we do next? And it takes a famous pop star who has been through, like, basically rehab, and kind of like, this is the first time she's about to go off on a big new tour. And it's taking a person who has abused drugs and had her own sort of situations come up, and it takes a person and puts them in a situation where people aren't gaslighting them both characters are dealing with things where people just see the behavior, the erraticness of it, and go, yeah, these are all the signs of this thing. It must be something else, right? So I really, really love the way it plays in these spaces, the way the characters start to slowly lose their mind, and how the rest of the world is not ignoring them, but is just seeing the way they're behaving and be like, well, obviously it can't be a real demonic entity of any type. It must be you going through something yourself. And I think that that is just like a brilliant way to play in this space. Like it's not just a thing that metaphorically deals with grief or tragedy in the past. It's like it's not only is that like the metaphor, but it's also the literal reality of what somebody has experienced. And I think that's just a brilliant way to handle this type of material. So for me, this is like, it's a film that I appreciate. I had a lot of fun with it. I love what they're doing. And I love the, you know, the setup that it's creating for for future films.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I don't know what they're going to do next, but they've clearly built themselves there's a lot of paths that they can go if they choose to.
Yeah. Like you can write yourself a check to make future films, or you could just call your shot and write yourself a checkbook.
Yep, exactly.
Future films.
Yeah, and you know, I'm here for it because I feel like future films will continue to be less scary to me and more blowing up the world in a way that is amusing.
Yeah.
Already, like, the smile thing is well explored in the first movie, right? Which is why they need to do something different in terms of who it is, in terms of what the stakes are, in terms of what motivates it. But they are still finding new avenues to explore just in the actual phenomenon, right? Like, without getting into spoilers, I'll say this movie focuses much more on, like, the subjectivity of perspective than the first one. Like, the first one has a few things that nod to it. This movie goes way harder, which fits with a character who has just gotten out of rehab and is seen as being untrustworthy and potentially prone to blackouts or things like that. Like, it totally makes sense. And it does jerk your chain in a fun way. Like, it dangles possibilities and then pulls them away from you back and forth in a way that does make you feel kind of gaslit by the movie in the same way that the main character feels gaslit or jerked around by this creepy entity that is cursing them. So I had fun with it. I can't say it has lived in my head for very long. You know, like I already mentioned, it didn't scare me. Like there wasn't one night when I had an image that returned that was like, ooh, that's creepy. It just kind of was like, that was fun. Good on you. You pulled off like the trick of how do you make a sequel to a movie that feels like it should not have a sequel. And they totally did it in a way that makes me think more installments would also be fun.
Yeah. So you're saying you're committing to the tens of thousands of future smiles.
Totally. I mean, until they get to the point where they start to do like what Joker did for the DC universe, where they're like, okay, it's going to be a smile movie, but it'll be a totally different genre. Like if they make like smile movies that are genuinely scary again, maybe I'll rethink it. But if they keep along this train, sure, they can't hurt me. I already know the monster. Like the scariness is over. So it felt a lot to me like the leap from when we did our Hereditary Midsommar double feature. Hereditary fucked me up, right? That is a scary movie. That is like deeply unpleasant.
Yeah.
You know, it is meant to make you feel really creeped out. And compared to that, Midsommar was like bigger and brighter. The scares are happening mostly in broad daylight. And it is still a horrific movie in the things that happen, but it never scared me the same way. It made me more think like, oh, wow, good on you. I like the metaphor. I like what you're doing here, Ari Aster. And I felt similar with Smile too. I never felt scared, but I did feel like clever. I like this. I like this combo with the pop star. You know, there's a lot of fun. I'll say smart. Like I think the fun of the movie is dumb. You know, like I'm just like imagining all the different sequences that happen, and it is very much having fun and toying with you in a silly way. Yeah. But it is clever the way that they constructed it to make it work.
Yeah. So where do you think? I mean, we know where they can go next, but like as far as a type of person who could be in a situation where they're exposed to weird people, like what do you think? Where is the next place we can go?
I don't know. I'm a clown.
They just go back to regular old school scary stuff.
They're just going to go closer to Joker. It feels like there's a lot of potential, but I am struggling. Like, I'm drawing a blank to think of what is a type of person whose experience would be varied with the smile curse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is once you go pop star, like you take anything that involves parasocial relationships and that's all gone now, right? Like you can't even, you can't even go back to it's what's inside's like influencer thing anymore because like essentially you have that in a pop star. So yeah, it's got to be something different. Can't be celebrity. It's got to like go backwards now.
I think it has to be like for instance, without giving too many spoilers, I think Taubes, that actor whose name I'm forgetting from House, Peter Jacobson, he would be a sort of character that would be interesting to explore further in the world building sense of what do you do with this thing? How do you beat it?
Yeah.
I think that could be a fun path to take. That would be kind of a zag, away from the terror of it and more towards the mechanics of it. It could be fun.
Or if instead of following the person with the curse and then being, following the next person with the curse, you follow the people who at the end receive you do it backwards, right? Where you're following bystanders in situations where a person they know is behaving weird. So it's like a horror. Dude, what if you're watching a horror film that like splits its way back into the Smile franchise where like you think that your friend is the one who's possessed and it turns out that they are, and now you're possessed because they kill themselves at the end of the movie.
Interesting. Wow. My mind is blown. I had an idea and I'm losing it.
And it's gone.
Yep, it's totally gone. Your idea wiped it out.
My idea killed itself in front of your idea, and now your idea is housed.
I guess one thought, and I haven't figured out how this would dovetail into it, but you could work with the limitations or get back to showing less if you were trying to make it terrifying again. I'm trying to think of what showing less could look like. Like you could do smile for like maybe a person who's deaf or something, right? Like you could have like more of like the horrific imagery that pops out of nowhere, because you don't have the clue that this thing is happening to you.
I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but that would be interesting to see how the smile entity possesses you if you're lacking the faculties that sort of tie into a specific experience, because it's technically all inside of your head anyways. So like other things would it's interesting. This is like a thought concept out of a film version. I haven't unpacked
it yet, but I'm trying to think of what is the equivalent of smile for someone who can't see. I don't know. All I can say is I don't see a sequel ready-made, but I feel like they've proven that they can come up with a fun concept that would get me back to the theater.
Yeah, I feel like what they did is sort of like set a legacy for Smile, where like anybody can make a Smile film now. And like maybe this turns into like a VHS situation where people start doing like short Smile films.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What about it might be obvious, but what about a comedian? Think about it. I'm just deriving Joker again.
Yeah, I know everything goes back to Joker. Except for the twist of that movie is that he's just so sad and pathetic that the entity can't even make him kill himself.
Or, they could pull a Scream like a Wes Craven and make it be people making a Smile movie.
But the lead actor is like a Jared Leto type, who's just the asshole version of being a character the whole time.
Who's committed all the time. So you could have all these fake outs where it's like you think you're being haunted or whatever, but then it's actually just them, But then you turn around and there's another person smiling. I think you could pull it off.
Yeah.
There is something a little muddy about the mythology that I wouldn't mind if they explored more in future ones, which is we know how this is transmitted, right? Like I assume we're allowed to spoil the first movie by now.
Yeah.
So we're allowed to say that this is transmitted when someone sees another person kill themselves. because the smile demon thing made them do it. And that trauma is passed on to the person who witnessed them, and that repeats itself. So it's basically like it is coming after you and mocking you until you kill yourself in turn. But there's also a nod, because it is true for multiple people that they show having it happen, that they had to have suffered some other deep trauma in the past that is foundational to them in some way. In the first movie, it was the death of her mother. And when she's researching all the other people who had it happen, there was always some kind of family connection or something that was really hard. It remains true with the pop star in this movie. I don't know why that is also necessary in light of the mechanics of the first one, which makes it seem like the observer is not a willing participant and has nothing to do with it. It almost feels like it's like an idea and a half when one idea would have been enough.
So I think that is what they do narratively to try to add complexity to the story they're telling, because you know, it might be that without all the flashing back and all the other stuff that you'd only have like a 30-minute smile movie. So they
sounds great to me.
I'm telling you, man, when they go VHS route, but I think they're using that not to pad the runtime in a bad way, but like they're trying to extrapolate out. But if I was trying to like just for funsies try to explain it, Stephen, I would say it's actually just commenting on the universal nature of trauma that we all experience in our lives. So you might think that universally everybody has something in their past that they are always reckoning with.
Right. And that thing in the past is what the creature, the presence, the whatever uses against you. And so that becomes the image that is recurring in your own life.
Yeah. Though as you were trying to walk through it, I did sort of just break in my head for a second, where I'm honestly going to pretend like I didn't think of this while you were talking, but I'm going to say it anyways, just so I can ruin everybody else too. So we know from the first film, purely going by the first film, that the entity, you know, if we let's call it a parasite for now, it, once it's ready to move on, it's like absorbed all the trauma it can from its host. It kills itself so it can travel to somebody else. There, we are introduced to a character who broke the mold by murdering somebody else in front of somebody else and allowing it to transfer away from them. So we know canonically that it doesn't require the host to kill itself. It just requires a gruesome murder to take place in front of somebody. Why does the entity itself have to kill its host body? Because if it's causing it to do whatever it does, it could also cause the host body to murder other people in front of other people. Is it just that the easiest path is, instead of trying to get two people together, you just need one other person to witness it?
I mean, can it get two people at the same time? Like I know multiple people could witness it, but have we seen any evidence that it can multiply itself?
No. What I mean is if it wanted to, like, let's say its path was always murder instead of suicide. It would have to wait till a moment where two people are in the same spot, so it could kill one of them in front of the other person. So that makes that equation more difficult.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a 3-body problem. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, it might also be that if the goal is to be maximally traumatic or unusual in the way that the death occurs, it might just be that the image of a person happily taking their own life is like an easier shortcut to that compared to like murder, where maybe unless the person knows both people involved, they don't know how unmotivated or motivated it is or whatever.
Yeah, but so moral of the story is we enjoyed the film.
Sure.
We enjoyed the franchise. We're excited to see where it goes next.
Yes.
Stephen is going to be watching these forever.
Yes, I'll be watching it through my fingers. I did do that in the movie theater a few times. There were a few times when I knew a jump scare was coming, like a moment with like laying in bed next to Dylan Galula, where I was just like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to hear it happen. I don't have to see it happen.
Yeah.
And I would just like cover my eyes and wait for the noise to signify that a jump had happened.
Usually I'm pretty good with jump scares, where like I'm so keyed into exactly when it's about to happen that I'm almost in like a reverse adrenaline thing where like when it happens, I can't even respond to it because my body is like already dipped.
Right.
There was one that got me pretty good in the movie.
Do you remember the like without spoiling the context? Because there was one that really got me too.
I don't even remember now. It's too traumatizing, I think.
Mine involves a naked man.
Nice. How full was your theater when you saw it?
Pretty empty, unfortunately.
Okay.
I mean, it was the Metreon in a kind of early showing. I think I snuck out at like 4:30 or something, so I wouldn't expect it to be packed. But there was probably like 15 people in the theater or something. How about you?
Okay, yeah. For me, it was definitely the same. I think this is a film that benefits from having a lot of people experiencing it at the same time.
Yeah.
In many different ways.
Yeah, my audience had a lot of fun with it, and even though there were few of them, it definitely they helped me feel like I was having a fun ride.
Yeah. Mine was pretty much empty except for maybe 8 total people in the theater, and some of them were talking to each other the whole time, and those are the ones seated closest to me, so that was a little frustrating. But in general, I kind of wish I had to see this later in the week than I wanted to. I wish I would have been able to see it on the weekend and kind of get a bigger, better crowd, but it is what it is.
One thing that fucked me up is the people in my theater, clearly, a lot of them must have had something to drink before going, because, there were multiple people who did bathroom breaks, go back and return. And where I was sitting was, right in my peripheral vision was the entrance to the theater. So in the dark, I would periodically just see, a person, scurry in my periphery, and that freaked me out more than the movie. If you were in jump scare mode and you see people walking in the dark, it is very unpleasant.
Steven, I told you not to see the 4DX showing.
I know. I should have listened.
All right. Anything you want to say before we get to our verdicts?
No, I feel good. I do think the last few horror movies you've made me review, I have commented on them not being that scary. And so I wonder if this means I'm growing and changing and just I'm less influenced by the terror of a horror movie than I used to be.
Yeah, I do think it is a thing that you get not deadened to, but it's kind of, it reverses itself, right? It's like the scariness is scary, for lack of a better word, and then eventually the scariness is kind of like a little bit of tingle or excitement. So I think maybe you've just crossed the Rubicon, whatever. You sort of reached a point where now you're in. You got one foot in, Steven. Welcome to the club.
I will criticize, by the way, this reuses almost beat for beat one reveal that already happened in the first movie about getting a phone call from a person. And that disappointed me, because up until then, I felt like the movie was pretty good about finding fresh ways to do the same thing. And that was just 100% mashing that same button a second time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how far deep I can go into it without being spoilery, but I do think that the amount
of time
different. The amount of time it sits in it, I think from the intellectual standpoint of how far you can go of breaking your hold on reality, I liked it, but I did feel a little bit the same. This is just the formula now.
The general thing that happens, I like it, and I think they treat it differently than the first movie, but just the reveal using the phone, I felt like there were so many ways they could get that effect without reusing the exact same idea.
Are you saying it was the get away from her, you bitch?
Yeah.
of the Smile movies?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I can see that. All right, Steven, with that, I think it's probably time to get to our verdicts. So if you were going to give us a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I'm going to say recommend with a caveat. I think this was a lot of fun. It's a fun ride that improves upon the first movie at least intellectually, even if I think it doesn't have quite the creepiness that the first movie gave me. But to me, that is a pro, not a con. So I guess the caveat is if you want a very disturbing horror movie, I don't think this is it. This is a much more fun popcorn flick than it is I don't think this is going to creep you out. So if you're looking for that, look elsewhere. But for the rest of us, enjoy.
Yeah, I think like at the midway point of this film, I was maybe floating around a recommend with a caveat. But I think with a little bit of distance and everything being everything, I think I'm going to give it a must-see. Like, I like what it's doing. I'm a fan of where the franchise is going, or at least where it's telegraphing that it's going. And I love that this movie exists. And I'm just happy for what it was doing. So great space to play in. And I think got to elevate it to a must-see. Everybody should see it.
Yeah.
And if you're like Steven and you hadn't seen the first one, you should go watch both.
Definitely. Though I do wonder, someone who hadn't seen the first movie, will the second be scarier for them? Like, is my belief that number 2 isn't scary just because I was desensitized from having seen the original? Or is it really the way it plays? It's just like the life of the protagonist is so removed from my world. In the second one, it didn't give me the creepy crawly, oh my God, what's going to happen when I turn the corner in my bedroom tonight? You know, it's like a completely different, I can separate myself more. But I wonder what someone who went in fresh, how they would feel about the world building.
Yeah, plus we have apps now for getting drugs. We don't got to go to the one guy's house and hang out in it and watch him kill himself.
That's true.
Dude, what if your smile curse person was a gig economy person?
I know. I was thinking that too after you brought it up. You do probably interact with a lot of weirdos in that world.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to let that thought linger in our heads. But in the meantime, we're going to say goodbye to y'all. So, Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at sdavidmiller on Threads and Blue Sky, or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get the back episode of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so in Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. Later.
Bye.